First woman, that's right.
Are we ready, Dr. Manker?
We are now streaming.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to open up this meeting with a roll call. Mr. Altman, do you mind serving as the clerk for tonight?
No, sir.
All right.
Mayor Bennett.
Here.
All right. Vice Mayor Parton,
Here.
Mrs. Randolph,
Here.
Ms. Holloway,
Here.
Ms. Gore,
Here.
Mrs. Denton,
Here.
Mrs. Pelham.
Here.
All members of council present.
Okay. Since Mayor Bennett, you're online now, I'm going to hand the meeting back over to you for us to go into closed session.
Okay, is there a motion for us to go into closed session?
I move that we go into closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code Sections 2.2-3711A1 to discuss and consider personnel matters, including the assignments of specific public employee and the city attorney, and A6 and 7 to consult with the city attorney regarding specific legal matters and actual litigation requiring the provision of legal advice, and where such consultation in open meeting would adversely affect the city's interest, and A4 for the protection of the privacy of individuals and personal matters not related to public business.
Second.
Motion's been made by Vice Mayor Parton, seconded by Counselor Denton. Roll call, please.
Oh, discussion.
Oh, discussion, I'm sorry.
I raised my hand.
Ms. Pelham,
Yes.
and I just, Counselor Pelham, I didn't have my, I'm on my
Yes.
phone, so give me 1 second so I could see.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
discussion and Counselor
Yes.
Pelham?
I believe that we should not go into closed session no more than 15 minutes because our initial announcement to our citizens that we would meet at 6:30. So those who may be on YouTube or whatever medium they're using, they're waiting to see the presentation, and to keep them in there, go to closed session and stay for anything over 5, 10, 15 minutes. I think it's not fair to their time. So I don't agree with going into closed session. So I will be voting therein not to go in. And then we can do closed session after we've discussed whatever we're going to discuss with the water company, and oblige our citizens with our initial printout announcement of our meeting. Thank you.
Are there anyone on the phone who has dialed in who would like to be part of the discussion? Okay, no more discussion comments, so roll call, please.
Counselor Randolph,
Yes.
Counselor Holloway,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Denton,
Yes.
Counselor Pelham,
No.
Mayor Bennett,
Yes,
Vice Mayor Parton.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
so you're in closed session.
Dr. Manker.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Ms. Holloway.
I see. We'll be after this closed session. I understand. I just didn't understand.
You're ready to do your presentation, she'll give you,
Hmm.
and then that's when.
So you just stay till I get that up.
Yes.
And then, I mean, just stay close by after that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Barry, you might want to mute.
Dr. Manker,
Yes, ma'am.
I did not receive any information for the closed meeting.
So the closed meeting information just went out at 6 o'clock. It went to all
Okay.
counselors. Um, give me one moment. I can email it again to you, okay?
Thank you. Hello? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I should be in closed session. Am I in closed session?
No, ma'am, you're still here to open.
All right,
Consetta will
Got
send
wrong
you the
number.
link.
all right. Thank you.
Consetta, you need to mute.
Okay. I think we have everyone here. Waiting on. Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone back. Is there a motion to come out of closed session?
So
I make a motion, we come out of closed session.
Second.
Motion's been made by Counselor Randolph, seconded by Counselor Pelham. Is there any discussion?
Oh, God, no.
Roll call, please.
Counselor Randolph,
Here.
Coun-
Yes.
Counselor Holloway,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Denton,
yes.
Counselor Pelham,
Yeah.
Mayor Bennett,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Parton.
Yes.
So we're here this evening to,
Let me read the certification.
yes.
Yeah.
Pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.23712D, where only public matters, one, lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements, and two, identified in the closed session motion discussed in the meeting. Counselor Randolph,
Yes.
Counselor Holloway,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Denton,
Yes.
Counselor Pelham,
Yes.
Mayor Bennett,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Parton.
Yes.
Thank you.
Before I turn over the special meeting, is there a motion to adopt the special meeting agenda?
So move.
Second,
Motion's been made by Counselor Pelham, seconded by Counselor Denton. Discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Randolph,
Well, can we go back to discussion? The agenda, well, shoot, no.
Counselor Holloway,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
No. There's a concern we need to address because
Yes, exactly. That's why I was like,
Do it during discussion.
already did discussion.
Oh, that's right.
There weren't, was your hand raised?
No, I just,
Okay.
sorry, it's
Um,
my fault. We need to do that special proclamation or a resolution. And that's not on the agenda, so that's why I said no.
is there a substitute motion?
I move that we adopt the agenda and add the special resolution as item number 2.
Thank you. Second.
So just a point of parliamentary procedure, we were just in the middle of a roll call, so unless you completely scratch that from the record, we need to fix that. Oh,
Everybody vote no.
yeah.
Yes.
Let's see, I think I was with Counselor Gore, Counselor Denton.
Oh,
Yes.
you can't do that. Wait a minute.
No.
So we got Counselor Randolph, motion to adopt the agenda was no.
Yep.
Counselor Holloway,
I said yes.
would you like to change your vote?
Yes, no. No.
Counselor Gore was a no. Counselor Denton,
No.
Counselor Pelham,
No.
Mayor Bennett,
No.
Vice Mayor
Did
Parton.
you get
No.
Motion
did you get me as a
fails.
no?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Motion fails. Is there a motion to, Counselor
Mr.
Randolph, would you like to go ahead and say your motion?
Mr. Parton did the motion and I
Okay.
seconded it if he wants to repeat it.
Please restate your motion,
Sure.
Vice Mayor Parton.
I move that we adopt the agenda and then add the adoption of the resolution that was presented in closed session as business item number 2.
Second.
Seconded that.
Motion's been made by Vice Mayor Parton, seconded by Counselor Randolph. Is there any discussion? I do not see any hands. Roll call.
Counselor Randolph,
Yes.
Counselor Holloway,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Denton,
Yes.
Counselor Pelham,
Yes.
Mayor Bennett,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Parton.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Prior to us turning over the special meeting I'd like to welcome our guests from Virginia American Water Company. And I would like to ask council to hold your comments and questions till after the presentation. All right, it goes to you, Mr. Altman.
Thank you, Mayor Bennett. Mayor Bennett, members of council, as we discussed during the communications that we had during the ice storm, between the 2 ice storms and during the water outage that week between February 13th and I guess ending really around the 19th, that Friday morning early, there was a request of council to have an opportunity to have representatives from the Virginia American Water Company to come before council, come to a council meeting, address the water outage issue that occurred and answer questions of council. Just so council knows, I did receive some questions from members of council that I did forward on to Mr. Barry Suits, the president of Virginia American Water, so he would know those questions in advance of tonight's meeting. In your packet, you had the timeline that the city, that we put together regarding when we began our planning for the ice storm back on the 13th, running through the closure of our EOC on Friday about noon on the 19th. That's in your packet. In addition, a timeline summary was provided by Virginia American with regard to the water outage. That they're both in your packet. I've requested some information from Dominion Power. I expect to receive that shortly, but I did not receive it in time for the packet. If there are any questions that council has of me regarding our timeline, I'm happy to address them. If not, I would turn the meeting over to Mr. Suits, our guest, president of Virginia American, so he can discuss the outage with council and their plans that have been in the works for a while to address some of those issues that have occurred recently. Any questions of me? Okay, I don't hear any. I don't see any hands. With that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Barry Suits. He's the president of Virginia American Water Company. He's here with us tonight. Those of you that have been on council, we've had some interaction with Mr. Suits, unfortunately, I guess we'd say in the past. but he's here this evening to address the outage and answer questions of council. And again, if you received any questions from any of your constituents, to have them tonight, if you could, to ask. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Suits.
All right, thank you, Mr. Altman. I guess I'll first start with, can each of you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right, and can you see the slide that is up that just has our water tower and says City of Hopewell? Everybody can see that?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, I want to start by just saying thank you to you, Mayor Bennett, the entire Hopewell City Council, City Administration for having us here this evening. I also want to thank the customers in our Hopewell District for their patience during the recent interruption of water service. Virginia American Water understands and shares your frustration. We know that this event was not easy on anyone, and we are truly sorry for any inconvenience it caused. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the City of Hopewell and especially its police and sheriff's departments and the emergency management team for their support as we and our employees worked around the clock to restore service. With the city's assistance, we were able to quickly set up bottled water distribution, and by the time we were able to lift the boil water advisory on the 19th, had distributed 380,000 bottles of water to customers in Hopewell. We were also able to deliver bottled water to the hospital, nursing homes, and other critical care facilities, as well as to several public housing developments and those individuals who are unable to come to the bottled water distribution site. I'd be remiss if I didn't also thank the Virginia Department of Health for their partnership and assistance throughout the event. At Virginia American Water, we regularly evaluate our systems to identify opportunities to improve the resiliency and redundancy at our Hopewell water treatment plant. In a minute, I'll show you some slides that depict this, but a $25 million upgrade, and Mr. March mentioned it briefly, a $25 million upgrade for the Hopewell water treatment plant, including replacing electrical infrastructure, pumps, chemical facility improvements, and treatment upgrades, has been underway and will be completed later this year. And while this work has been done, rates for Hopewell customers have remained relatively flat in recent years. I appreciate the opportunity to join this meeting again to represent Virginia American Water and to listen to your comments and to respond to your questions. Before we go into and there's going to be a lot of time for the questions and answers. Before we go into those, I thought it'd be helpful though to show you a quick overview of our facilities, introduce our local manager, and go over the timeline of the event. So with that, I'll move into myself. I've met some of you before, but not all of you. I've been with American Water and/or its subsidiaries since 1993. I'm a civil engineer by training and came here to Virginia American Water in late 2015 and assumed the role of president then. I was prior to that vice president of operations for Illinois American Water and worked out of our St. Louis area, East St. Louis and Metro East area near St. Louis in Illinois. I'd also like to introduce, and I think some of you have met Mr. Pekonski. Charlie is our senior operations manager. He replaced David Clifton, who I know some of you would have met and came to Hopewell as a manager a few years ago. He retired and Charlie came in last year, and we're really excited to have Charlie there as our lead. He's got an extensive background in production in water treatment and wastewater treatment plants. We were able to get him from our Pennsylvania American Water team, where he started in 2005 and has many years of experience. So Charlie's on the phone with us today too, and we'll be helping go through the Q&A. This slide might seem obvious to everybody, but I know there may be some customers watching and maybe even some council members. I think I just wanted to depict a couple things where you see the red box on the river side of the picture that says intake. You will hear us refer to that sometimes as intake facility or low service facility. And that is where we draw water out of the Appomattox River and then through pipe, pump it up to the plant, which is on the right-hand side of the picture near the industrial complex. So, I think sometimes people might not be always clear of that that distance between our intake structure and the plant, and just thought it'd be good to have that in the, kind of as a visual on where our facilities are and how they work. This is a timeline that I was going to go through here just briefly to give a little context. It's exactly the same points as were provided in your packet, so you don't have to necessarily try to take notes. We just want to have them on a slide so that you and others watching could see them as we go through the presentation, or if you want to refer back to them easily. But I'll start and kind of hit a number of the points on the slide that you see. The event really started in the wee hours of Sunday morning, February 14th, about 12:30 a.m. That's when we experienced a weather-related utility power outage. At that point, our backup facilities, our generator and diesel pumps turned on. Throughout the afternoon that day, there were, power coming back to the other customers around our facility, but we didn't get our power back because the transformer that serves our low service or intake facility had failed during the outage. At 6 p.m. on the 14th is when we lost our backup low service pumping abilities, and at that point we were unable to send water to our treatment plant that we saw in the prior picture. Later in the evening, we made communications with the city, emergency management, and customers. And even yet later, Dominion was on site to begin the replacement of our transformer that serves our site. Unfortunately, the transformer that initially was installed wasn't compatible with our electrical systems and damaged some of the intake equipment at that facility. As we moved into Monday the 15th, in the early morning hours, we began to lose pressure in our distribution system in town, and we communicated that to customers beginning early in the morning on February 15th. Later that day, we initiated with the help, as I mentioned earlier, of the city and their staff, and in coordination with the Emergency Operations Center, the bottled water distribution at 10 a.m. And that continued except for the Thursday, February 18th, when the weather had really deteriorated. And in anticipation of that, we had handed out additional water on the day before the 18th, so that folks would have water to get through the day. We didn't hand any water out. Midday, we got power back to our low service intake facility, and we're able to resume pumping to the plant at that point in the afternoon, midday. And late evening on the 15th, we were able to repressurize our water distribution system. We began communicating that early on the 16th, but unfortunately we had a setback in our restoration at about 9 o'clock, 9:20, something like that, but mid-morning, where we lost power to our water treatment facility, and that's the plant facility, not the low-end service near the low service intake facility near the river. And then that afternoon, the distribution system depressurized again. Later that evening, we were able to get both backup power and utility line power activated at our plant site, and began to repressurize the system. In the overnight hours, we're flushing and began sample collection early on the 17th. We took our second set of samples on the evening of the 17th, and we lifted the boil water advisory on Friday morning, the 19th. At that point, we stopped the bottled water distribution and began demobilization of the facilities that we had set up to hand out water. I want to share just a few slides of the plant facility that depict somewhat, I mentioned earlier about the construction that's been underway in the last several years. This particular equipment that you see now is a new domestic high service pump station. And so you can see the building there on the left and the pumping equipment inside the building on the right. That's been put in service in the last several years. The next photo I wanted to show you is construction that's underway now of the industrial non-potable high service pump station. So you see the building on the left and the pumps that are in place there on the right. That's what we expect to have online later this year. It's also critical to note that we will, with this project, have entirely new electrical switchgear and feeds to our plant from Dominion. So that's a key component of this project beyond just the pumping. And then lastly, amongst other projects we have, I just want to show you the three largest, but this is an important component of the current construction work as well. We added a new chemical feed building that improves and adds new equipment related to chemical feed and the treatment itself of the water as it goes through. So I think we'll leave these slides up if we can. So if we need to refer back to them, we can. But with that, once again, I appreciate the time to come and present. And I guess I'd open it back up to you, Mayor Bennett, for the Q&A portion.
Thank you. I have hands up. Councillor Pelham. Councillor Pelham, your mic is muted.
Yes, sir. Excuse me. Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Suits. A question regarding reimbursement for the time that the citizens were inconvenienced with this water drought. I know Dominion basically was that in that timeline for the 14th and 15th, was that totally their days of discomfort to us, or the 15th, your equipment went out? I couldn't get that in the reading.
So I guess the question is, it seems like it's two parts. Was the first part about reimbursement, and the second part was about understanding the period of time we didn't have Dominion power?
How many days do you account for that you may be able to reimburse the citizens of Hopewell for non-use of the water?
So I appreciate that question.
The most important question. You plan on giving them a credit on their water bill for missing 4 days, 4 to 5 days of non-water use?
I appreciate that question, Councilwoman Pelham. We regret the interruption of water service. We devoted our full resources, even brought in additional resources that generally wouldn't have been in the system to work on restoring service as quickly and safely as possible. No utility is able to guarantee uninterrupted service when events such as these occur. We don't provide for billing adjustments or claims for customer reimbursement of expenses. I just remind the folks that we do regret the interruption, but by the time service has been restored, we had distributed 380,000 bottles of water, about 40 to 50 bottles of water for every home in Hopewell.
How many bottles for each home?
40 to 50 bottles on average for every of the 9,500 homes in Hopewell.
Are you talking about 40 to 50 bottles of 16-ounce bottles?
Yes.
With a home that has average 3 to 4 people in it, you know how many bottles of water that is per family. But the question is this: does the franchise agreement indicate that you don't have to reimburse people for the inconvenience of the water stoppage?
I have not recently reviewed that franchise agreement, Councilwoman Pelham. I do know that, our tariffs, what I've stated earlier, are consistent with the tariffs that we have with the commission. and that, no utility is able to guarantee uninterrupted service. We regularly evaluate our system to make sure that we're doing what we can to improve resiliency and redundancy. And the improvements I showed you a little bit ago are an example of the work that we've done, more than $30 million on just those projects that we believe will help mitigate anything like this happening in the future.
Okay, because, well, I know you can't guarantee, but my thing is, not only did you give each household 4 bottles of water per person, but the inconvenience of waiting in line for an hour to 2 hours just to get 1 glass of water. And I appreciate the $30 million project, but it doesn't account for the 3 times that we've had stoppages in the last 3 years. And this stoppage was wasn't it for the same reason that we stopped 12 to 18 months ago? Was it for the same breakdown?
No, it wasn't. This was initially a weather-related event related to a power interruption at our low intake facility.
Okay, initially it was Dominion, and after that it was your company. So my thing is, this was the first time this happened. It wasn't one of the prior 2 reasons that it stopped before.
Yeah, this was a completely different set of scenarios in this event as compared to past events.
Okay, and so no reimbursement.
I might note, and I don't have the exact numbers, Councilwoman Pelham, but we did distribute many cases of water directly to customers' homes or individuals' homes who weren't able to get out or go and go through the distribution line, as you mentioned. So we did make an effort to do that for customers that had special needs, and that notified us in the city.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I was one of one of my seniors was served by that effort. All the citizens throughout, and we appreciate our staff helping you with that as well. So in the agreement also, so the city would incur the expenditures for overtime of any expenses that the city incurred. Do they get reimbursed? We get reimbursed?
That's a question that, I guess at this point remains open. I know we did speak with the city administration and the fire department about, a backup tanker for the one day that they secured, and we've agreed to work with them on that. And so we could have further conversation about that, Councilwoman Pelham.
Yeah, I'm talking about personnel costs.
I understand.
And other costs. So that's a reimbursable cost, you say, or you have to talk about it with the administration?
I think we'd have to talk about it with the administration and understand more about what that would entail.
And administration, do you have any idea of how much extra cost the city went through during this 4 to 6 day period?
No, ma'am, I don't have a cost off the top of my head of what any overtime costs that we may have incurred during that time.
But are you calculating any costs for this incident at all?
We have begun to look at our costs, yes, ma'am, but I don't have a number at this point.
Yeah. Okay, so you are
We're yes, ma'am. We're looking into what costs may be and what costs we may have occurred outside of our normal operation.
And is the city attorney still on the line? Is Madam City Attorney still on the line?
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
that's all. Never mind. I give someone else. I yield the floor to someone else. That's my initial question. Thank you very much, Mr. Suits.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Next hand would be Vice Mayor Parton.
Thank you, Mayor Bennett. I've got a list of about 13, 14 questions, but I'm going to start with a few and I'm going to hand it over to someone else so they can have a turn as well to talk. But before I ask my questions, I'm just going to remark on the comments and questions that Ms. Pelham made. I just find it absolutely unacceptable that you guys won't provide any sort of credits to the residents or to the businesses or to the industry for loss in business or production loss. I mean, this was not the first time an incident has happened. This is not the second time an incident has happened. And really, I don't believe it's the third time. I believe it's either the fourth or fifth in the past 5 to 6 years that something has happened where water has been cut off to residents, businesses, and our industry. And this has had huge health impacts, especially during COVID-19. It's had huge economic impacts on our small business community and also our industry. And so I find that absolutely unacceptable. And I hope that you will reconsider and change your mind about these reimbursements, because I know we can't take a whole lot of action tonight because we're going through Q&As, but I do plan on pursuing some sort of action to get some help for these people in order to make sure that they've been adequately compensated for the loss of business and also for the inconvenience that they had that we pay good money for. But the first question that I have for you is, does Virginia American Water have a preventative maintenance program?
We do.
Okay. Can you elaborate a little bit on it in terms of what type of preventative maintenance is done for pumps, generators, and coordinating with Dominion to look at transformers?
I'll start with generators, Vice Mayor Parton, if that's okay. And they're inspected on a quarterly basis. So we inspect our generators on a quarterly basis. As for pumps and electric motors, I don't have those exact routine checks, but they're done on a regular basis to track in our maintenance and systems that we utilize to work that preventive maintenance. Relative to the transformers, Dominion Energy owns and operates the transformers, and while they likely have an inspection process, like any other mechanical equipment, they can fail, and particularly in times of strain or severe weather events, like we experienced at the beginning of this event.
So you guys don't coordinate any time to have Dominion come out and inspect them?
I think that's a question, for Dominion. Once again, they own those transformers. When they do work that interrupts or involves our facilities, we certainly coordinate with them. And so I think, we do coordinate with them when they're having to do work that impacts the service to us. But I don't have the details on exactly what they're doing. I'm not an expert on electric transformers, so I don't have those details right now.
Okay, how often do you check the pumps?
Well, as I mentioned, those are on there's different aspects of the pumps that you maintain and check. And so, some are more frequent than others. That detail is something I don't have available tonight, but the packing and bearings are different than the impellers and some of the other aspects of the pump. So they are checked on a regular basis. The pumps in this case, not to change the question, were not the source of the outage. It was not related to the pumps themselves.
Okay. For the equipment, when you go and inspect them, are these pieces of equipment, the generators and such, are they checked internally, or do you have external individuals that come in and check your pumps and provide a quarterly, semi-annual, or annual certification on them?
It's a combination of both.
Okay. This is going to transition into the water distribution point that you mentioned over between the high school and Patrick Copeland. How come there was only one distribution point and not multiple ones throughout the city?
Yeah, I think the best answer to that, Vice Mayor Parton, I mean, we work collaboratively with the city to determine the distribution points that would work best and to maintain security of the site. through our collective efforts, we were able to distribute, as I mentioned, 380,000 bottles of water, the equivalent of 40 to 50 bottles per home. We took an active role in the lead of procurement and staging and distribution of the water. And we were very fortunate to have the support of the city and the schools in securing the site and the Hopewell Sheriff's Office to assist with traffic control. But once again, that was a collaborative effort with the EOC and the city in terms of the distribution point.
Okay, but that still doesn't answer my question. Yeah, how come there was only one distribution point? Did you guys recommend multiple distribution points? I mean, we're talking about a city of 22,000 people, and also, hundreds of small businesses, needing to get water for their business and also for their, family and loved ones. I mean, did the idea ever come across anyone's mind to have multiple distribution points?
I don't recall any direct discussion of that myself. What I can tell you is to mitigate that, we did deliver water directly to those that couldn't make it. I did visit the distribution points, and while there may have been lines at the point I was there, it was moving pretty smoothly. And it's a remarkable amount of water. I know it may not seem like as much for each person in a home, but it's multiple tractor trailer loads of water that were distributed in a very short period of time. So I think in future events, if there would ever need to be a distribution of bottled water again, we'll again coordinate with the city and take this into consideration and work with what would be best at that time.
Okay. And I'm not trying to, diminish the fact that y'all, did some, door-to-door deliveries. Our public works team did a phenomenal job where they were moving hundreds of cases of water throughout the city, especially in high density areas. But, for future, hopefully this never happens again. But if it does end up happening again, I think that there should be at least 3 to 4 distribution points, for residents to go, because working class professionals do not have time to wait in a 1 to 2 hour line that goes from the high school all the way to 15th Avenue. I mean that in and of itself is just a huge inconvenience, and again, it's time that individuals are having to take away either from their jobs or from their businesses themselves, that they're having to wait in this long line to get a basic necessity. And again, just another reason why I think that y'all really should give credits and compensate residents and small businesses because of this. But I've asked about half of my questions right now. I'm going to allow someone else to answer some questions, and then I'll readdress the remaining ones that I have.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Barton.
I see Councillor Gore and then Councillor Randolph.
I think in fairness, Councillor Randolph had her hand raised before me. I'll go after her.
Okay. Councillor
Thank you,
Randolph.
Councilor Gore and Mayor Bennett. Mr. Suits, thanks for being here and answering some of our questions. Of course, we as councilors heard a lot from our constituents, and part of the problem is that I think that communication by the city and by the water company could have been much greater in different capacities to reach all of our constituents so that they understood better. If you would help me to understand your timeline that you wrote up for us, there's a couple of areas that I'd like to just clarify in my mind, and maybe it'll help some of the constituents that are listening to understand a little better as well. So my first question starts on the evening of 2/14, where the intake facility loses backup service. Now, I understand that the weather created an issue and that you have a generator and diesel pumps as backup at the intake station, correct?
Correct.
And then that evening, that generator failed. Do you all keep additional generators or spare generators on site anywhere in your facilities in the city?
We did not have one on site for for that location.
Okay, do you
that point in
normally,
time.
do you normally do that, or are you going to consider in future having backup generators stored somewhere in the city? Because I know that you had a couple of the plants that were offering them, but just didn't know if you were planning on housing or having easy access to backup generators in case.
You know, there's a number of improvements that we're focused on now, Councilwoman Randolph, and we're taking that into account
Okay.
in the design of the future projects. We have currently additional backup on site and available that we didn't have on the 14th, and you know, that's there for the coming weeks as we work to bring on other equipment
Sure.
in a permanent fashion. So I guess the answer to that question is we are taking that into consideration along with some design aspects that make things more resilient and provide that backup you're describing.
Yes, sir. Okay, that's great to hear, because certainly you, just like the general public, are at the mercy of the power company as well. But to have a generator, sometimes it works, but if it doesn't in a situation with the water company, we need more. So go down to the 214 entry for late night, and it talks about Dominion replaces faulty transformer rate intake, but initial replacement is not compatible with water company electrical systems, which we believe damaged certain intake equipment. Now, you aren't for sure, and can you be more specific on what was damaged to prevent the pressurization of the system at that point?
So as you think about what we've been focused on since this event started, the first and foremost was the safety of the employees and workers that were working to restore power. Also the safety of the water and the citizens of Hopewell. So our focus initially was on restoration of service and to make sure that happened as fast and safe as possible. We've turned that now more to short-term and long-term projects that we believe, as I mentioned earlier, will mitigate interruptions like we experienced. Some of the details that I'm sure you would like to know and others would like to know. The Hopewell Water Treatment Plant, like really all water facilities, is considered critical infrastructure. And critical infrastructure, is vulnerable to a range of threats and hazards that could, impact the public health and safety I just mentioned. And so we work with public health and law enforcement and regulatory authorities, other emergency response entities, to mitigate risks that could compromise the continuity of service, including publicly disclosing details of the plant and its operations. What I can tell you is that there is equipment at the low service facility that we have believed was damaged, and we'll be looking at that further to both understand what happened and to replace it with equipment. We'll have more.
Okay, so what I hear you saying is that you're not going to elaborate on the systems that were damaged because you don't want to give away plant particulars that people could use in future for negative purposes. I understand that our water system is very susceptible. I understand that, and but are you going to be able to give us any of those short and long-term projects that you've just mentioned at some later date without the details, so that we know that, other than a generator, there's more being done to mitigate the effects of power outages and things of that nature?
Yeah, I think, so I showed a few slides of some of the work, and which I'm slowing again now,
Right.
that's been in the process for a number of years now, and these things are about to come online. We will have other projects in the coming months and years that are beyond these, to your point, and certainly we'd be willing to make a presentation to council on the work that we're doing, similar to what I'm showing now, that would address, I think,
Okay.
some of the concerns you're noting.
Yes, sir. And I'll go back to the night of the morning of 2/16, where it talks about the main plant failure of an electrical gear due to an automatic switch failure. I think what Mrs. Councilwoman Pelham was referring to is that this is exactly what we were told had happened 2 years ago. That it was an electric gear automatic switch failure that created that problem. So is the new rehaul or upgrade that you're doing going to resolve this issue, and that a switch is not going to get wet or have issues and create a gear problem that in your mind once we convert, or is that still going to be a potential issue that you all need to address for future?
So, one thing I'll start by saying is, we can't promise that nothing mechanical will ever happen again, but we do believe that the changes that we're making, are going to mitigate that. And one of the things I think I stopped on this particular slide, and I can't go into a lot of the detail, but we are showing that slide of the new
Right.
building with the pumps inside it. I'm not going to say what's in that gray box outside, but what I did mention when I went past this slide is that is a complete new set of switch gear that as part of the project that's about to come online this year. And so to answer your question in part, that would then replace the equipment that we note was damaged.
Okay. And I won't.
Does
push
that help you
for
understand what we're doing?
Well, it helps me understand you're doing something, not exactly what or how, and I don't expect anything to be 100%. But considering that we have had some issues with the water company and the service, as most of the counselors have pointed out, some have had nothing to do with you. We've had to take the water system down because there was a fuel leak at the intake, and that was at no fault of yours, but it did impact service. And considering the age of the plant and the age of the infrastructure for the water and the number of households is minuscule, I understand, but when you start having problems, I can't imagine that your people that you service in other areas in Virginia, I think Alexandria and Prince William County, they would be happy if they had the same number of outages that Hopewell has. I know we're a small city, but I also know that we're important to you with the industry that you serve here. And I guess with that said, I think that a lot more communication between now and the upgrades is going to be extremely important and ongoing, because we have a lot of water piping in the city that's antiquated and is creating problems today as we speak. And I also think that the communication by both us as the city and you as a company could have been much better during this outage to explain what was going on. I know that I felt that we should have known more than the plants did, or at least as much as the plants did, and I'm not sure that happened. And so I will ask that you all spend more time in communicating with the general public and the city staff, the city manager, his staff, and he can pass it on to counselors. But I would ask that communication improve, not get worse. And so for me, I would like to see our water service just be something we can just count on constantly. And I know you would too. So
We would too.
I would like for that to be my closing statement, and I'll move on to let somebody else have time. Thank you very much.
Counselor, if I could just say one thing, I want to make sure that that you as the council and leaders in Hopewell and the residents and constituents that are on the call, you are important to us. You're as important as any other customer we have, and you know we share your frustration and certainly want to provide the kind of service you just described. You know, and we are making considerable investment. You know, in fact, in between 2018 and 2020, we've invested about $45 million in Hopewell in total, and that includes not just the projects that I showed, but you know, some of the piping upgrades and water tower work and other things that we're investing in Hopewell to make your service what you're wanting. But your customers and you are very important to us. Thank you for your comments, duly noted.
Thank you. Counselor Gore?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I have a couple questions. One, thank you for your time this evening. I think Counselor Randolph really touched on some of the points I wanted to ask. Several residents are repeating the same thing: is why is it always happening to Hopewell? And so one of my biggest concerns is truly the infrastructure of the organization. I know there's a huge investment that's being put in place, but then long term, after these items are put online, really realistically, are you looking at having to make major renovations to make the plant what it needs to be in terms of its infrastructure to reduce these occurrences? That's my first question. I mean, how realistically, does there need to be more investment put into our facility in particular?
So, you know, right now we are investing, the current project that I showed earlier was 25 million. We've invested about 45 million in the last 3 years. And so we will have other projects that we've identified and are working to identify now that would further bolster that infrastructure investment and help to mitigate the likelihood of outages in the future. I guess, Councilor Gore, you know, one thing I heard kind of from your comment just now and in the prior ones is communications. And so, you know, that's duly noted, and we'd be willing to attend future meetings and provide updates on the projects, you know, that are underway and how they help. You know, and maybe when we get to a point where it's safe relative to both COVID and the construction work is complete, you know, that might be sometime in the future, but we're willing to bring folks like yourself in for a tour to see those facilities, you know, the parts that we can show in person, if that would help.
Yes, thank you for that. What are American Water's plans? I did pass this on to the city manager to share in regards to outreach directly with the community, to hear from them in regards to their experiences and their frustration. You know, as their elected officials, they are sharing those with us directly, especially when the water outages occurred both times. We caught, to be very frank with you, we got the heat. Yeah. And we have nothing to do with the water system. We don't control American Water. This is not a municipal water system. We cannot direct anything, and we do not fund your budget, your infrastructure, and things of that nature. So I do have another point with that, but in particular, I truly am advocating for American Water to do a virtual meeting or something with our residents to talk to them directly, because as it was stated earlier, off the top of my head, this is the 4th time in 3 years that this has occurred. And so it's starting to become a yearly occurrence when the water has gone out. And I can say that I have residents asking me for an investigation into American Water. I have residents asking, can we switch to the water system of our regional localities? I mean, I'm getting hit left and right with demands that something happen. And as I try to explain to them, we do not control American Water. This is a private business. And as their customer, they should be talking to you, of course, talking to us, but as the company, I would hope that there would be opportunity for residents to engage just like we are and ask questions and have clarity directly with American Water officials. Is that something that is being considered or in the works?
This is our first step in that, and we are looking at ways, to communicate with our customers. We do that through, in normal times, through a variety of things, right? We do that through messages with bills, messages on bills. We do it on our webpage and in social media. I think your idea about a meeting with customers, maybe a virtual meeting or some kind of meeting, is something that we can take into consideration, because I agree, we need to we view ourselves frankly as a partner with the city of Hopewell. We know that we are there as a utility in your space, and we view ourselves as a partner, and we do want to communicate and help communicate with our customers and your constituents about their water service. So I think those were good comments, and we want our customers to come to us and ask us questions about what we're doing.
Yeah. So I'll just say here, I'm personally inviting anyone in American Water leadership to join a board town hall or meeting to engage with my residents, because they are seeking to engage directly with you, not through me. And so similar to COVID-19, I invited the hospital, I invited the health department. So I'm publicly inviting someone from American Water's leadership to join in that type of effort. It doesn't have to be a big corporate thing, but just to be accessible to people. I think that's critical. So I'll follow up and officially. The other thing along with communication, I will share, I had two main concerns with that news story that came out. Right before the news story hit, we were given an update regarding the situation with the water, right? And so we said, hey, we're anticipating, they're doing repairs right now. This is the second time it went out. And then within hours of us sharing a press release that was provided to us, the news story broke. And then I'm sure, like other counselors, I was inundated with messages and calls about why is our water not gonna be on until Friday. I understand from what we were told that was an issue between the news and American Water. But one thing of concern for me was there wasn't a press release or a statement clearly from American Water clarifying that information that was reported was not correct. Why was that not the case? I know that we were told that there was an update on social media within a thread. Again, if I'm not following every single comment on your page, I wouldn't know to go to a comment in a comment to get that update. So what happened with clearing that record up?
I guess, and I was pretty active, as you can imagine, in the recovery process. But the news story that broke, could you elaborate on that a bit so I know exactly what news story you're referring to? I apologize, but I
it's okay.
Need a little help.
Yes, it's the news story, and I'm not trying to be funny. It was the interview with you, and the news reporter, or I'm not going to say news reporter, it was reported that there was a special part that needed to be ordered and that water wouldn't be restored until Friday. And then that caused a frenzy because people were like, wait, now we're going to be without water until Friday or next week. And so council asked administration to reach out to American Water to get that clarified in a more official way, such as a statement from American Water, a press release saying this is inaccurate or whatever. And I know we were told that there was contacts made to media stations for retractions, but I still did not see anything from American Water other than a post within a post trying to correct the record. Meanwhile, we're having to explain to people this is not, a true. There was something misquoted or misstated in the story, but we had nothing to cite.
Thank you. And now I recall this is where I think the news station reported on the length of outage without asking us for comment, and they reported a date that wasn't correct because actually the water was restored late in the night on the 16th. And so that's I understand that frustration. We did follow up with that news outlet and appreciate the frustration that caused. We did put, I think, some information on social media, and we'll go back and look at our communications documents to see how we could have better gotten that out to customers. I think, the root of that goes back to the station that reported it without getting comment from us. Because, frankly, I don't even remember how I became aware of it. It might've been through city administration first or through our external affairs person. But, we did reach out to the media and they pulled the story, but, by then thousands of people have probably seen the initial one. And so,
Right.
We worked to get it changed, and we'll look back through that particular event and see, how that can be improved in the future. I understand your frustration.
Yeah. Thank you. And I recommend if something like that happens again, that American Water issue a statement for us to share, correcting whatever was misquoted. So that way we can point to a source. And then also those who are following your social media directly hear from you the correction. And so I think that that's critical, because seriously, the whole night we were spent trying to say
Right.
that's not true, but we didn't have anything. The other thing I would say is in regards to your social media, that's the world now. That's just where we are. And especially with COVID, more people are spending time online. The other thing I found to be concerning is looking at some of the comments, because I was searching for a statement from American Water to share. A lot of constituents, again, thought that this was a city council problem. And looking at some of this misinformation online, I'm looking to see if your press team I was looking at the comments that were coming from American Water, but I saw nothing regarding correcting that very egregious error that people thought that we controlled American Water system and operations in your budget, your infrastructure. There was nothing to help clarify that, but there were statements from whoever manages the American Water page addressing other things. And so, I think that, and I asked the city manager and administration is to put out something as an education tool to let people know we have no control over this. And that's another reason why, for my concern about you guys coming here to just address us as council, because I feel like that could be an added misconception that we have some type of oversight that we do not have, which is why I'm advocating for you to talk directly to your customers. I do have two other quick questions right now, then I'll pivot for others to ask, and I'll go back to mine. In regards to what Councilor Parton was sharing in terms of the distribution sites, I will suggest that we look at having gallon water, or either a way for people to put water in containers, because that was another major complaint that I received. And then also looking at extending hours past 5 o'clock for those who are working and have to commute to come back home. Because that was also an inconvenience for other people in regards to this. I do have a few others, but I'll again pivot for the rest of the council to ask their second round of questions, and then I'll pick up back up. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Councilor Gore.
Thank you, Councilor Gore. Councilor Pelham?
Yeah, I yield to someone who haven't spoken yet first. Anyone? Okay. All right, again, we all pray that this doesn't happen again. But again, I hope that if it does, we will, of course, take the suggestion of Vice Mayor Parton that we have at least 2 or 3, whatever, setups for different lanes. It went on for 6 days. Therefore, again, considering the lines that were developed, that you also consider giving a maximum number of cases of water to constituents, like 4 to 6 cases, because again, giving 15 bottles of water per person in a household is not enough for 6 days initially. So you keep coming back when if you know that number up front now, figure it out to give people enough water for 3 people in a household for 3 days, so that the lines will not, and people won't waste gas waiting for hours and wasting time with their families and rushing back from work to get those items. And again, it's just not to be belaboring, but a company as large as yours to not have one backup generator in Hopewell seems very infeasible to me, because we as constituents have backup generators for our own homes. And when you have to give a service to a city of 22,000, that's just something that's PM to me. That's a preventive maintenance type thought process as well. And I'm hoping, I guess, with the $30 to $40 million project that you've put into Hopewell, do you now, with this system, have a backup generator of some type and a backup? I was in the military. We always had a inventory on hand of things that happened. Once we learned it happened once, the next time we always had to have that item in our inventory stock so that we would be prepared the next time. So what with the new plant and the new improvements, will you have backup for feasible breakdowns of equipment or operations?
Councilwoman Pelham, was that a question for me to answer now?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, we will. And I tried to allude to that earlier, and we do have backup now. I think the question I answered earlier, maybe I misstated. What we didn't have was backup generation to the backup generation. So we have, many, multiple backup generators around Hopewell serving various components of the system. What we didn't have was the backup generator to the backup generator at the low service or low, intake facility at the river. So we did have backup power. What we're building back is not the same as what we had. So there will be added resiliency and redundancy in what we're building and designing now, to answer your question.
Okay.
So
And
the
the other
answer is
thing is
yes.
that one of the comments of the citizens I spoke to, not just mine, but was a concern that water bills went up between this falter and the last one. Therefore, of course, again, why will we get credit for this mishap of 4 to 6 days? So I know you said you don't do that, but if you would take that back to your corporate board or your investors or whatever, I know everybody don't want to lose money that they're investing in your company. But at some point, the people that make you who you are you have to, show that you can care about them paying dollar after dollar to make your company viable, to give them back 6 days of not being able to use a flow of water, to have to wait for 15 bottles of water can never replace the time that was wasted out of their lives. So at a minimum, you can reimburse them for a cost. That's the only way I can see it being done. So I truly advocate that you can not, if that's your decision, then we have to live with it. But if I know there's someone above you that you report to, if you would take that concern back from most of our citizens, I'm sure, please inquire and see if that would be a consideration still. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Pelham.
That's all I have.
Okay. Vice Mayor Parton, and then and then Councilor Gore.
Thank you. To kind of dovetail off what Ms. Pelham just said again about helping out our residents. Have you guys done just a basic cost analysis of what this water outage and what the past water outages have done for residents and have done for businesses and for our industry?
Thank you for that question, Vice Mayor Parton. As a water utility, we're really not privy to the information that would be required to perform that kind of analysis. We recognize that this had an impact on customers. We mentioned that, we understand your frustration, but, no utility is able to guarantee uninterrupted service. And I don't know how else to say that differently, but we just don't have the information it would take to do the kind of analysis you're describing for those businesses.
Well, have you or anyone from your staff or from the company reached out to, just some of the small businesses here in the community, or even just to the main industrial plants here to the city, and seeing what it's done to their business.
Well, I know we have staff that work directly with our, commercial and larger customers. I know they've been in contact with customers in Hopewell. I know personally, I spoke with the CEO of Advance 6 during the event and understood the frustration there, and have spoke with other leaders. Our local manager is part of a group that meets. I don't know with COVID how that works, but a group of industries, the Manufacturers Association, I think it's called in Hopewell, that meet monthly, maybe prior to COVID. He's an active participant in that group and speaks with them. So I think the answer is we have spoke with customers there, and we're certainly our phone lines are open for customers to talk to us, and we'll continue that outreach.
I mean, I think it would be beneficial to, especially reach out to, our small business community and, the industries and see, again, what that impact was. I mean, especially when we're talking about doctors' offices here in the city and we're going through COVID, what that's done. I really think that y'all need to give some serious consideration to this and reaching out to them and seeing what the impact has done, because, we're also talking about, people's livelihoods. So, I mean, that's, going to be a request that I ask for you all to do, is to, please do a financial analysis of, what this last outage has done. And to, if you have any historical data from the past when you talk to them, I hope that you will, pull that and you see what it's done, because I think it will go to show that, I mean, this has had a major impact on our local economy. And I think, if you look at it with all the data and the dollars in front of you, I think you'll be a little bit more sympathetic towards, giving some credits towards residents and towards the small businesses, and, some sort of, maybe reimbursement to the industry. But the second question that I have before I turn it back over to anyone else that would like to ask questions is, I know you talked about a $25 to $30 million electrical upgrade project with generators and pumps. And you talked about over the past 2 to 3 years about 40 million or so dollars being reinvested back into capital improvements at the plant, and also with the water lines in the city. It's my understanding, and from what I've heard from people, and again, I want to know, from you guys, is it true that, in the last couple of years, y'all have actually turned money, the Hopewell plant turned money back into the corporate entity for capital improvements?
I don't know that I understand that question, Vice Mayor. Could you, the answer would be no based on the way I heard it, but could you describe that question in a different way?
Sure. So I'm assuming that you guys annually have a budgeted amount of money for capital improvement projects. What I've heard through the grapevine, and I want to know from you all, is not all of this money has been spent. And again, this is allegedly, and I want to know the money that was not spent, instead of reinvesting it back into this plant, did the plant or the company as a whole send that money back to the corporate pockets, or did they actually keep all that money back at the plant to be reinvested?
So, I understand that question a little better now. What I can tell you, and I don't have the exact numbers, Vice Mayor Parton, but we spent all of our capital budget in the most recent fiscal year, plus a little. So we actually, we spent what we budgeted plus a little more than that in the most recent year. I think something similar the year before. I don't have those details right in front of me, but I'm not aware of any, quote unquote, money being passed back anywhere. And in fact, we're continuing to invest heavily in infrastructure upgrades in Hopewell, as I showed you in the photos and as I mentioned earlier.
Okay. Can you email our city manager and send copies of the annual capital budget, and you can either, black out like the actual project names, but the actual dollar amounts.
We'll coordinate with Mr. Altman.
Okay, thank you. That's all that I have for right now.
Counselor Gore?
Thank you. Brad asked my last bit of questions. I just want to say that I do thank you again for being here. And just that to share that the frustration that you may see for me or others, it's just the fatigue of having to experience this like annually. And the fact that our residents are fatigued as well. So I do want to say in fairness, Charlie came and helped out giving us masks during COVID. I enjoyed that whole engagement and I look forward to future partnerships. Derek has been a great asset as well in terms of thinking about ideas to improve Hopewell. So I just don't want you to get the impression that overall, we're just upset about a lot of different things. It's just this particular issue just keeps resurfacing. And that's why the question is, what is it about the infrastructure? Do we need to advocate and lobby that maybe we get some funding to help with infrastructure or whatever we need to do to address this problem? Because I understand, Mr. Stutes, where you're going when you say, you can't promise that there won't be interruptions, but, and I'm sure you can understand from the sense of if my cable keeps going out, I'm going to get tired of dealing with Comcast. I'm going to switch over to Verizon or whoever I can get stable internet. In this instance, people just can't switch over and get a new water company, right? And so they're kind of stuck unless council decides to truly explore other options that we're being pushed to look at and by some people. But in regards to that, how do you really mitigate this issue when it keeps reoccurring and people know it's not like they can just pack up and go get water somewhere else? And that's why I'm stressing that I really think you need to talk to the public and just have that touch because they're reading stuff, they're experiencing this time and time again. And then also not to mention the time frame that we are in. We obviously know that water is a necessity due to COVID and we need to have it for hygiene, but then think about the stressors that people have been dealing with for a year and some change regarding COVID and how that has completely impacted our lives. So unfortunately on the back end, it's like we're a year into this whole process, people are just naturally drained with trying to survive, right? Work-life balance, education, all these different things. And then we have this in the middle of an ice storm. And so timing couldn't be any better, but knowing that this is where our society is, just having that touch, right? And I think will go a long way. So, and then, and the last thing I would say is, I just got a message sharing that for someone watching is saying, hey, yeah, even if they may not want to reimburse us, as Councilor Plum is advocating, I had to come out of pocket and spend a couple of $100s to get water for my family. And so I had to pay that and then I have to pay a water bill. And this is not the first time it's happened. I think 1 or 2 times people are like, okay, but when it's annually, people are like, okay, what's up? You got to do something. So just keep that in mind when you take that message up the chain that, people, and it's happening when people are already, in some instances, already financially stressed, right? So that's that. The other thing I would share is in terms of notification about when instances happen, I could be wrong, but it seems like to me, whenever we're notified that the water may be running low, it's kind of around the time we're told there's like a couple of hours left in the tower. So how many hours of water is in the tower? And when something goes wrong, when is it like a trigger to say we need to let the city know? Because it seems like we're always caught when it's like, we only have a couple hours left conserved, but by the time we get the message out there, the water's gone.
And that varies. So the amount of hours that is left varies on how full the tanks are, how many, what the consumption rate is. And so that varies from time to time. We will look at those communications and have future, coming conversations with city administration on those communications. I think this last event, we started to communicate with the EOC and around 9 p.m. and probably later the next day is when we lost water. I'm trying to see when we notified customers in the early morning hours of the 15th, I guess. I understand that frustration, and we'll look at those communications and the timelines and see what we can learn from them in terms of providing more advance notice if that's possible.
Okay. And just try, even when you consider these discussions with the community, there's other ways that you can also share information in general, besides just what's going on with the infrastructure and your plans, and even this water crisis. We've had people contact us regarding the color of the water, the smell of the water, this is a chance you can also educate people about that to address some concerns or questions. So I'll just throw that bone out there because I do remember getting questions regarding that. The other thing is Council Parton took the words right out of my mouth in terms of doing an analysis in terms of how this impacted business, which I'm not going to go back into because he covered it very well. But I will just ask the city attorney or the city manager, just again, for the public, for them to understand exactly, American Water operates here because of a SCC franchise agreement. Is that correct? And can you share a little bit more about how that works?
So it's my understanding that, there is a franchise agreement with the city of Hopewell. And it's also certain to me that I just haven't reviewed it recently. It's also certain to me that, we operate under the regulations of the State Corporations Commission, and they, provide the tariffs and approval of rates and service. So, those are two of the governing bodies that we have related to our operations in Hopewell, which is, State Corporations Commission and the city through the franchise agreement, and frankly, through your other rights as a city. Beyond that, obviously BDH from an environmental standpoint and DEQ from an environmental standpoint, also are regulators that we have on our operations there in Hopewell and elsewhere across Virginia.
Thank you. Mr. Altman, are you guys still reviewing those agreements so that way we can have a clear picture exactly what our rights or authority is, so we can communicate that to our constituents?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then lastly, Mr. Seuss, I know that American Water had a COVID relief fund at the end of December that we were notified. I think it was like $800,000, if my memory is correct. But by the time it came to us, and I don't know if it's the timing of the city or time we were notified, but there was like a week left to apply for people to try to submit for that. Is that a program still occurring, or what's the status with that?
I don't know the status of that right now. And I know we did reach out to our cities that we serve about that when that became available. We'll find out and report back to you on that. I guess, I would say we've strived to get, from American Water opportunities. Frankly, one of them is the Charitable Foundation. We got a significant grant for a park there in Hopewell along the river within the last several years. And so we do strive to help the cities apply for opportunities within the corporation that are made available. And I'll report back to you on the COVID question you have, specific to that one.
Thank you. And so I'll push you a little bit further. If we didn't use our $800,000, you can talk to the people to see if that could be potentially something that we could reinvest in regards to the questions and concerns raised. So again, I think we were given like a week. Mr. Altman, can you correct me on that? When by the time we got notification that citizens could apply for that, what was the time frame? I think we had like a week or two.
I think you're correct, but I'd have to go back and look. I think it was a short turnaround time, but I can't recall exactly how much time it was.
Yeah, I think by the time we were told about it to get the word out, it was like a week or 2 weeks for people to apply. So in the event that program is over, you can please share that, notification to get that out to citizens for aid was short. And if there is money remaining for our allocation that was divided up, then perhaps we can reinvest that into issuing credits with that monies instead of using it for the COVID if it was pulled away. I don't know if I'm being clear, but that's an option.
We'll follow up with you on the COVID program. I think, to clarify, I don't think $800,000 was available specifically to Hopewell. I think that was
Okay.
probably over a broader
Scope of area.
operation, but so I don't know the exact allotment that would have been available to Hopewell, but that would have been for a broader group, I think.
Okay, well, thank you for that clarification, and I'm sure the city manager's taking notes to follow up, but thank you for that. And I appreciate your time, and I'll follow up with my other invitation later too. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you. I don't see any hands. Is there anyone that is dialed in would like to ask a question, have a comment?
I have a comment. This is Councilor Holloway. Question that has been asked or has been answered. I have received questions from constituents in Ward 2, and all of those have been answered. But I would like to see the reimbursement for constituents for the time period that the water was shut down, because the constituents faithfully pay their bill. And if their bill is not paid, the water will be shut off. So therefore, I would like to be one of the advocates for the constituents to receive the reimbursement on their bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Pelham? Counselor Pelham, your mic is muted.
Who mutes me? But anyway, excuse me again, Mr. Suits, who are y'all accountable to when things like this happen then? Maybe I don't understand that. We're not in charge of you guys. I know SCC has some type of relationship, but do you just be a corporation that can provide an inconvenience to a city and not be accountable to anyone?
And maybe I wasn't clear, Councilor Pelham. We're accountable to the city of Hopewell. We're accountable to the State Corporation Commission of Virginia. We're accountable to the Virginia Department of Health, and we're accountable to the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, to name a few. There's some others related to being a public corporation that's traded, publicly. So, those are certainly all lines of accountability, and I may not have clearly stated that earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I know. So with that again, to follow with all of us, who would you report back to request? Would they reconsider, or is that even a question you can request of your upper management about the credit reimbursement? Is that just a dead end from your perspective, or is that consideration that someone else on the board can make?
Well, certainly we'll be, conveying back the information that we've heard from all of you tonight. I guess at the end of the day, no utility can promise uninterrupted service. The equipment is mechanical and subject to potential breakage. Other things can happen. We understand that frustration, and we're going to take those comments back and look at things that can be done. Our first and foremost effort has been safe and reliable restoration of the service. And then secondly, to prioritize projects that we're identifying that beyond the ones we've already shown you and that we're doing, we believe will mitigate the likelihood of similar situations and outages like this in the future.
Yeah, but okay. Well, again, as Ms. Holloway said, they pay mostly on time. It's a utility that everyone needs, but when it's inconvenience, then that's something that we need to look at to see, especially when it sounds like it's the same issue that happened consecutively. So I'm just for at least not leaving the citizens out of some monies that you can't pay for the inconvenience, and that was more than the reimbursement you could give them. Just the inconvenience of time, and for 6 days is picking up a case of water for every day was just too much. But thank you for what you did do, and hopefully you will be able to convey that strongly to your people that's what our citizens want. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Counselor Denton?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. Most of my questions, Mr. Suits, have been asked and you have answered them. I would just like to thank you. I know this has been a trying experience for all of us. You are here to see that the citizens and all of our people in Hopewell have the proper water. And I know you tried, and like you said, we can't control everything. But I do appreciate you coming tonight and answering our questions. And thank you again very much.
Thank you, Counselor Denton.
I don't see any other hands raised. Right. Mr. Altman, did you have any words?
Well, yes, we want to thank Barry and Mr. Suits and his team, certainly for him being here this evening and willing to answer questions of council. I would certainly say that I think he understands the concern and the ramifications of the impact on the community. We will be having further conversations with them as we move along. I know that as he had mentioned, we had discussed during the outage, once the upgrade is completed, the ability to have council come and tour and see the improvements that have been made on site and have some discussion of the redundancies that would be in place to help preclude some of these events in the future. We appreciate his appearance this evening. It was a very trying time, obviously, for all of our citizens, kind of compounded in the middle of 2 ice storms. So we hope not to have to ever be out at the high school in Patrick Copeland again, handing out water ever again. And I think Mr. Suits would agree with me.
I agree with you on that.
But we do realize that as with any utility, there are going to be things. Dominion's not going to be able to guarantee complete power all the time. There are outages due to weather events and other things that occur. So we will continue to work with the American Water in partnership moving forward to ensure that our citizens have a reliable source of water. We're going to be reviewing the franchise and working with them and on things that may need to happen. They are a member of our wastewater treatment commission, so they have a seat at the table there. I believe they also have a seat at the table at our local emergency planning coordination group, and as he had mentioned earlier with HMA. So there are a lot of things that occurred. We did get inquiries from industry and our hospital during the outage, and we relayed those items on to Mr. Suits and his team. So again, thank you for coming this evening, and we will be working together moving forward to ensure increased communication amongst all the players at the table and with our community at large, so our citizens know what's going on in a timely fashion along with council. I don't have anything additional this evening, Madam Mayor. That's all we have.
That's all we have for Mr. Suits. And you would,
Oh, I do have one more question.
okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Suits. Has this,
Yes.
something of this where you pass out water in either small or larger municipalities, has that happened throughout Virginia and your other states that you're in?
We have distributed water during interruptions of service in other states and to some degree within Virginia when there's outages, maybe not of the entire system, but even of, significant, like an apartment building or something. So
Yeah, has it ever happened in Northern Virginia? Don't y'all have that?
I think we had a water main break within recent weeks where we handed out water to customers that were impacted.
You run the same type of operation where you coordinate with the city, you give out one case of water per household and whatever, same procedure?
Yeah, we would approach it in the same way as we did in Hopewell. Yes. Yeah.
And they didn't receive any credit as well, correct? Across these other states and communities?
I can't speak for other states. Each state is regulated by their own commissions and those rules. In Virginia, that is true.
And the commission here that regulates you is the SCC, correct?
Correct.
Mhm. So if we wanted that change, we would have to go to them to make it a part of future agreements? Or just make a public, when that.
Yeah, I think that'd be something you'd want to, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
I think that's something that council will have to discuss later with.
Yeah, I think with
I know,
legal,
but I'm-
with your legal advice, yeah.
Say again?
So there's various ways. I think that's something council would have to discuss, Counselor. And then I think, obviously, you guys as a city have participated in proceedings that we've been in and be, in front of the commission in the past. So I think, you can.
We'll comment
Raise it
when
for
that
those-
public hearing comes around, which I think, Mr. Marsh, can you let us know when the next update is?
Yes, ma'am. We, as Mr. Suits has alluded, we have participated in several rate cases over the years with when Virginia American has requested a rate increase. And as one comes available, if another one comes, we will certainly apprise council and we will make a decision at that point, as we have in the past, as to whether we would participate. Certainly we would do that. I would like to quickly point out, as someone had mentioned earlier, the city and city council really doesn't have any direct control over American Water. The license that they have is granted through the SCC. We grant a franchise to them to operate within the city, but we don't have any direct operational control over the water company. Just, I know there's a comment that was made in the chat box. So we just wanted to make sure that those that were listening in the community understood it's not a city department. We don't have direct operational or budgetary control over the water company. They are a private entity that provides water within the city to our residents, our business industries, and even portions of Prince George County.
Yeah, there are ways to get their attention too, other than not being in control, but being in control. But
I think that Counselor Pelham, I think if I confuse people, when I say we're accountable to the city of Hopewell, it's exactly what you just described. We're accountable to our customers. We're accountable to you as representatives of those customers. But Mr. March is correct. The actual direction of day-to-day operations and oversight of the company is not in the direct control of the city. So
yeah, I think everybody understand that, especially listen to this tonight. But I'm okay. I know the next step.
thank you for your comments.
Mhm.
Counselor Denton, you have your hand up. Did you?
No, I'm sorry. No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Suits and Mr. Pykansky. If you would like to leave at this time. Thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you for having us, and I will attempt to leave. So thank you again.
Thank you.
We'll be look forward to future conversations. Thank you.
You'll get back with us with the unanswered questions, right, through the city manager?
Yes, we'll coordinate with Mr. March.
Thank you.
Moving on to R2. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
I move that we adopt a resolution.
Second.
Motion's been made by Vice Mayor Parton, seconded by Councilor Jensen. So discussion?
Yes, I think the resolution need to be read publicly. Is that appropriate? Or do we just say we're adopting a resolution?
I think it'd be appropriate since we don't have the resolution in front of us on screen.
Thank you.
Ms. Robinson, are you online?
I have a copy of it in front of me.
Okay.
So the resolution reads, a resolution authorizing the city attorney to provide legal representation. Whereas Chapter 7, Section 1 of the City of Hopewell Charter, the Hopewell City Attorney, whereas is to serve, represent, and advise the City Council, City Manager, and the city's various departments, boards, commissions, and agencies in matters affecting the interest of the city. And whereas on occasion and to protect the city's interest, the city attorney may be called upon to advise and represent a city employee who has been named as a defendant in a lawsuit relative to matters arising out of a city employee's performance of their duties of the duties of his or her employment with the city of Hopewell. And whereas while the need for such employee representation has historically risen in a context of civil claims and disputes, the city has determined that this interest of the city may also be affected when its employees are accused of criminal wrongdoing by residents in retaliation or in response to lawful actions taken by the employee to enforce applicable ordinances, statutes, and regulations. And whereas pursuant to Chapter 7, Section 1 of the Charter, the City Council may authorize and assign the city attorney to perform such other duties and functions as may deem advisable to the council at its discretion. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Hopewell City Council that this 4th day of March 2021, the following. 1, that the Hopewell City Attorney is authorized to advise and provide legal representation to Randall Correll hereinafter the defendant as deemed necessary to diligently represent defendant for the successful resolution of this matter and to perform such necessary actions in conformance with all laws of the Commonwealth of Virginia and the Virginia rules of professional conduct in the sole matter of the Commonwealth of Virginia versus Randy Correll, case number GC 21-125-00. 2, the city attorney's representation of the defendant is authorized hereunder shall be contingent upon obtaining the prior written consent of the defendant, that as a component of the consent, the defendant shall acknowledge that he has been informed in writing of any conflict of interest that exists or that may foreseeably arise during the course of the city attorney's representation of the defendant, and that such conflict or conflicts are waived by his consent. 3, in the event that the defendant neither consents to the city attorney's representation nor the waiver of any existing or foreseeable conflicts of interest, the city attorney may retain a private attorney to represent the defendant in said criminal matter at such cost that is reasonable based upon the complexity of the case and the availability of funds in the approved budget. 4, at all times relevant hereto, the city attorney shall be vested with the discretion to determine if or when she can no longer directly provide representation to the defendant. B, authorized to retain a private attorney to substitute his or her appearance on behalf of the defendant and directly compensate said private attorney for services rendered as necessary by the complexity of the case and the availability of funds in the approved budget. 5, that any legal representation provided to the defendant by the city of Hopewell hereunder, whether by the city attorney or through private attorney, is pursuant to full and complete reservation of rights, to wit, to demand full reimbursement of fees and costs paid from the defendant should he fail to fully cooperate in the preparation of its defense, and or he is determined by a court of competent jurisdiction to have committed the crime as charged. 6, this resolution and any portion thereof may be amended, rescinded, or repealed by the city council at any time. Witness here the signature and seal, Mayor Patience Bennett, Ward 7.
I don't see any other hands. Counselor Holloway, do you have anything since you've dialed in?
I do not. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Roll call.
I'm sorry, discussion.
Sorry, I just seen your hand.
I'm
We were
sorry.
still in this. I just asked if we had any. Counselor Pelham?
I just want to say that I'm gonna vote yes for this, for the support of it, but I just want to make a note that I'm making it without seeing the tape itself. I prefer to have done that just because it was put on the agenda at the last minute. I could not do that, but I will vote yes for the support of it, but I still would like to see the actual taping. Thank you. For the record, I wish you would be able to put that in the records as well.
Yes.
I have written it down as part of your comments.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor Pelham.
Thank you, ma'am.
I don't see any other hands. Roll call, please.
Counselor Randolph,
Yes.
Counselor Holloway,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Denton,
Yes.
Counselor Pelham,
Yes.
Mayor Bennett,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Parton.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Vice Mayor Parton, seconded by Counselor Denton. Discussion? No hands. Roll call?
Counselor Randolph,
Yes.
Counselor Holloway,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Denton,
Yes.
Counselor Pelham,
Yes.
Mayor Bennett,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Parton.
Yes.
Good night.
Motion
Good
carries.
night.